We checked this when it was just a baby, a couple of days old, but now we are at the end of the first week of the season, of the opening of both the Raid and Mythic Plus, so we get to take a look at how things have gone in the Mythic Plus season, compared also to what we looked at basically like 5 days ago. Before we talk about how things have changed in the players, we have to talk about the changes in the dungeons, because we have yet another nerf to Tazavesh, Streets of Wonder. So the timer once again goes up from 34 to 35 minutes. It was already nerfed from 32 to 34, now it goes up another minute. Postmaster gets nerfed. The energy gain starts 12 seconds after unstable goods instead of 6. So, since you guys don't know about mechanics, the unstable goods cast is the mechanic for the suitcases to throw in the chute. And he would start gaining energy, and once he gets to full, he gets to cast the AoE, fan mail. This was 6 seconds after casting unstable goods, now it's 12 seconds after, so you have 6 more seconds worth of time to both do the mechanic and then prep for the AoE damage. This is also good for the healer in this fight. Then you have Myza's Oasis, so the whole singing theater crew RP. Now you have 2 waves of enemies instead of 3. That's it. You just skip one of the spawns of Thrash. And then the mini-boss, which Blizzard really wants you to kill. The mini-boss before the last boss. HP reduced by 16% on top of 25% reduced Thrash count needed for the dungeon. So quite a significant nerf to the dungeon. You could see by itself, look at here, you can see Tazavesh Streets, the closest one to having 0% remaining time compared to the other dungeons. You can even see in the Mythic Plus runs, you can see the lowest run dungeon was Streets, the one with the highest percentage of depleted keys compared to the completed ones was again also Streets. So necessary, or rather deserved, kind of nerfs for Streets. However, talking about the actual changes in the meta, or I guess in what players are playing. First, we have an increase of players for Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman now is more than half of the played healers in the top keys of the season. Yes, talking about top keys of the season in week 1 is, still very small, but it could be indicative of how players are thinking later on in the season. I don't buy this. I don't think Resto Shaman will continue to be this powerful, simply because the highest throughput healer, so the one with the most potential for 5-man group healing is Resto Druid, and the one with the most potential for saving single target lives, one-shot mechanics on single players is Discipline. Resto Shaman doesn't excel in either. In fact, they are actually one of the worst specs when it comes to single target saving tools compared to the other healer specs. It is definitely, though, the easier to play, first of all, the more standard, the more common, so it's still more or less understandable and expected to see it popular early on in the season, much like we saw at the beginning of Season 1, where Resto Shaman was also the popular pick for about, the first month. What is more depressing, though, is the tanks, because when it comes to tanks, we do see more popularity gain for Vengeance. Now, this is a bit disappointing, because for 4 out of the past 5 seasons, so Season 3 of Dragonflight was Vengeance meta, Season 4 of Dragonflight was Vengeance meta, Season 1 of The War Within was Paladin, and then Season 2 was Vengeance again, and now in Season 3 we risk having Vengeance again. Having the same spec, in this case even worse, because unlike the DPS you can't have 3 spots, you only have 1. Having the same tank spec be meta 4 out of 5 seasons should be illegal. That should not happen. That's why we have to band together with the other 3 hopefuls being played a bit right now, Prot Warrior, Prot Paladin and Brewmaster Monk, hoping that later on in the season they will become one of them, or maybe even fuse them together, just as long as they replace Vengeance in the comp. When it comes to the DPS, we have the continuation of the shrinking of Hunters. Back when we mentioned our initial possible comp, meta comp for Mythic Plus for the DPS could have been Frost Decay, Arcane Mage and Marksmanship. Out of the 3, the one that was more at risk of losing out was Marksmanship, and it has indeed lost out in, in popularity compared to the others. But definitely they have been quite affected by the level of nerfs they have received in the couple of weeks leading up to the release of this season. One of the things that is happening right now is that there is a higher count of attempts at playing melee comps, physical comps, kind of strats, where tanks like Prot Warrior and Brewmaster Monk are the to-go option if you're going for this style, and then picks like Windwalker, picks like Feral, picks like Rogue, picks like essentially just a bunch of melees grouped together are being played. Prot Warrior also, alongside Brewmaster, do have the highest damage out of tanks they can already get right now at like 700 item level, at like 5 million DPS in a key. Also being already popular, but also the best healer for this comp, fits well with the rest, is Shaman because of their mastery plus Wind Fury cooked in buff. It's obviously a bigger gain for the melee DPS to play together with the rest of Shaman. So it is nice to see, at least for now, situations where you have, for example, Feral matching balance, or close enough to balance, which is not something you generally saw in previous seasons, as well as things like Assassination being played, Fury Warrior, while not being one of the dominant ones, is still at least visible. At least we can easily see the name compared to previous seasons where we couldn't, as well as even Havoc. Havoc is inexplicably being played a lot right now, despite not being particularly good at anything in Mythic Plus. Maybe it's just Vengeance Demon Hunter players who already feel the ship sinking, the meta leaning towards other tanks, and they are already prepping a Havoc Demon Hunter or something, but it has remained quite popular. The damage the damage breakdown in Mythic Plus is quite the sight. Seeing triple rogue, triple warlock in the highest damage wasn't in anyone's bingo card in the first week of Mythic Plus. You would have expected, even based on how things were going in the PTR, things like Frost Decay, things like Arcane Mage, things like Marksmanship, things like Elemental, even Devastation Evoker, definitely not this bunch of specs. A couple of these, sure, especially after the buffs, like Assassination in AoE was already known to be doing well at least Demolock in Mythic Plus, with the possibility of Destro. Definitely not Affliction though. But what we said at the beginning of week 1 is still more or less true right now at the end of week 1, which is we are still waiting for the massive power boost of the beginning of week 2. After another clear of the raid, most players, hopefully at least, will have their set bonus, their new season set bonuses after this reset. All at this point players will have crafted their first or even second 720 item level crafted choice, usually weapons, right? As well as your first mid-track vault from this week. So big power increase, big power jump. Right now everything is very clamped up together. If you look at the damage done in keys, you can see that in terms of average, you basically have everyone above this within like 10% of each other, 5 mil, 5.4, not even 10% of each other, so it's still quite close. You can see now also the difference, what we mean by popularity when you look at this. If we showed you this as the popularity, like wow, Marksmanship as well as Red Paladin are still super popular, right? But this is, as always, when you look at the runs, right, the key levels, you start going into actually, I guess, tougher key levels right now, 12 and up. You can see that the Ret and Marksmanship top 3 popular specs right now for DPS, alongside Frost, right? It's the top 3. As soon as you go in 12 and up, Marksmanship is here and Ret is here. So as soon as you go into the top 3, you see Frost is still here. Frost did not move. Now Arcane is much higher up, Assassination is much higher up, and now even Havoc. So compared to the all players' popularity, there is a more clearer idea of who to run in the tougher keys. And you can see this as well in the stock most popular comps right now. Again, this is the all levels, so all groups, your likelihood of ending up in these comps, I guess, and then you start going into the harder groups, the other comps, and suddenly the landscape changes. There is way more mages, way more assassination rogues, and the Rets have near disappeared. The Marksmanship Hunters, can we find... there's one Marksmanship Hunter and one Ret compared to the all players' popularity where there is way more marksmanship and way more red players. If you wanted to have, an idea of what the top groups are doing right now, you would have a hard time because of course everyone is just chilling with their group doing this level keys on week 1, which is completely irrelevant. To be fair, now that we know about the turbo boost coming in 11.2.5, this will also be useless for the next couple of months, because we're about to have in 2 months a massive item level increase. The trinket vendor will also come back, so basically everything that you do here won't have much value, because you will just jump up like 3 key levels once the turbo boost event goes live. So you see, for example, we just mentioned the heavy popularity in Mythic Plus of Resto Shaman and of Vengeance. And then you look at what the top groups are doing, and now there are way more even things like Artemis, just the one monk player just being played in their group, together with the Guardian Druid. And then you have a bunch of Prot Warriors even being more popular, and Brewmaster Monks being more popular in high keys than Vengeance Demon Hunters. That's another thing that is visible here from these top groups compared to the, I guess, everyday population when it comes to tanks. And then we can't even try to make sense of these DPS. This is literally just a salad of random colors with no rhyme or reason, It's a bunch of rogues, a bunch of DKs, there is also hunters, why not? There is Windwalker monks, shamans, of course, mostly of them will be elemental, mages will still be there, we can still find red paladins, banishers, of course, is in his group, so he can play pretty much whatever he wants. Is it survival, or is it beast mastery, or is it marksmanship? Who knows? Let's just play whatever. The only one perhaps a bit missing, right? Again, if we check this, it's like, wow, warlocks are pumping, and then you go here and there is like one Chinese Destrolock and another Chinese Destrolock. That's it basically for warlocks compared to their current damage. But looking at these groups, most players don't even understand why this is being done. Couldn't you just chill in +10s to farm for gear before you go into 15s? But hey, these players are the kind of players who enjoy doing Mythic Plus, so why not? But at the end of this first week, we're gonna have 3 question marks at the very minimum. The first question mark is shamans as healers. Are they going to continue to stay like this? Now, this is a question mark that might be delayed by a month or so. Basically the same question mark that was delayed here by a month or so. The idea that as long as the keys are at this low level, this is fine, but then it goes higher, people need to stay alive from one-shots and defensive and externals that they don't have, and they do, so Shaman just gets rotated over for discipline. Maybe it might be a different reason this time. It might not be for single target externals and absorbs, but rather pure healing, and in this case Resto Druid would come up. The other question is the danger of Vengeance. We don't want to see Vengeance again. We have seen them since Season 3 of Dragonflight for 2 seasons in a row. We had a brief respite of a single season of Prot Paladin and then back to just Vengeance. We are sick and tired of Vengeance being meta. We don't want them. We want one of these 3 as being meta. We are even willing to compromise a 50-50 between caster comp and melee comp. Okay, that would be even better for the DPS, because then it means you would give some haven to specs like Fury, specs like Assassination, Enhancement, Marksmanship, BM, Survival, Feral, Havoc, Frost Decay, to go to a melee comp, to go with like Wind Fury, to go with like physical damage buffs, etc, etc, as long as it's equal to the Vengeance caster comp. But at the very minimum that. And then when it comes to DPS, there doesn't seem to be that high of a chance at high level that these 2 DPS won't make it. Frost Decay and Arcane Mage right now. Disregard the week 1 DPS results where Frost Decay is average and middling and Arcane is actually bad. It won't be like this for good level, high level keys when it matters. So the question will be the 3rd pick. If you have taken Arcane and Frost, who will be the 3rd spec? And right now everything is open. We thought it could have been Marksmanship, but in the following couple of weeks after that idea, they have been nerfed a lot. They were already a question mark because of their pretty poor damage profile in Mythic Plus. Very front-loaded, very bursty, killing the smaller adds too quickly, not doing too much in terms of prior damage, and being reasonably target capped by their trick shots. So now that marksmanship is out of the picture, likely the players are giving up on marksmanship, then the question is, who will be the DPS that will take over? Right now we are high on Assassination and high on Havoc Demon Hunter, for example, but as we also saw from the compositions, it does happen quite often to see Rogue paired like this. Rogue, do you think that these druids are gonna be balanced or feral? I think these are feral. Yes, feral druid, melee comp, right? That's where you have seen Rogue paired with, and much less often paired with, the DK and the mage. The arcane mage that is popular with the DK, right? You can still obviously still see them together, but it is a bit also playing right now in their favor, both for rogues and for Havoc Demon Hunters and a few other melee specs like Feral Druid. So it will be the question of who will keep growing to match Frost DK and Arcane Mage. At this point, the last season's pick of balance is possibly just like Elemental is also possible, maybe even Shadow Priest could be possible. We will see who will eventually rise in popularity and match with Arcane and Frost DK, who seem like the lock-ins of the season when it comes to DPS. But for today, on this Tuesday, at the end of the first week of Mythic Plus, is what we have with pretty much two certain choices for DPS. A leaning towards one for Vengeance, but not that certain yet. Not even like, I wouldn't even bet more than, I would bet maybe like a good roll on a nice trinket, but not a best in slot one, just a nice one. That's as far as I would go as betting Vengeance. And then healers, with Resto Shaman being very popular right now, but there is still this idea that both Disc and Resto at higher stages of Mythic Plus might be offering more than them in the end. So for today, on the eve of another reset, or rather of the first really reset of the season, it is now time to leave each other. We're starting the goodbyes quite happy and cheery, because we have just now ended pretty much the season of heat and warmth, because it's starting to get cloudy and rainy, and supposedly that's the end of the summer, hopefully. So with this out of the way, guys, thank you guys for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, no, but for real though, I mean, it makes sense, right? If it's supposed to be cloudy until the 2nd of September, that's the end, right? We're not getting any more 35-degree days, hopefully.